Great.
Ellie, over to you.
All right, we are recording. Welcome to the Boulder Junction Access District Parking and Travel Demand Management Joint Commission's meeting. It is May 21st, 2025, and I will call roll. Ryan Cook,
Present.
Kevin Knapp,
Present.
Robin Ronan,
Present.
Daniel Eisenman,
Present.
Rebecca Dumichel is not here. Stephanie Pike is not here. Susan Grant is not here. Jennifer Schreiber, I believe, is still not here.
Correct.
And then we have Kevin Cross.
Present.
All right, I will turn the meeting over to Chair Roman for procedural items.
First thing we will be doing is a farewell to our departing commissioners, Sue Prant, Ryan Cook, and Jennifer Schreiber.
All right.
Do we please give?
Well, we can, if there's any point of privilege, the chair or any commissioners would like to say to Ryan, since we have him here, before we hand over the goods, the thank you gift.
Well, I'll take my point of privilege as the chair today by saying it has been an absolute pleasure and privilege to work with you on this commission for the past few years. I know it's been, I would say it's been a rough spot, but I feel like that might just be our new normal right now. So you've been with us longer than your original allotted time, and I really appreciate your service to the city of Boulder.
Thanks for saying that. It's been great.
Well, Ryan, likewise, I remember when you first came into orientation, I think I had just returned to the city back in the good old days of 2019. And we've been through a lot together.
Yeah,
So
we had a big thing that happened right in the middle there.
So now it's nice to see full circle, you're
Yeah.
here in person.
Yeah.
We're very sad to see you go, but as a token of our appreciation from Community Vitality, we have a print of something that we managed to get done during your tenure on the commission. Just as something to hang up on the wall, you can put you can put it this way if you'd like, but just want to pass this on. You can hang it proudly at home or at the office. We'll do that, and we really appreciate all your service. And you're welcome to reapply and join us again.
Yeah.
If something else, maybe we might have some seats available.
Sounds good.
Look favorably on the application.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate it.
And you're welcome to stay for public comment and just for fun, or you can go enjoy the.
I think I will depart. Appreciate you all. Thanks again.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, you too. Yeah, I know. I know. All right, thanks.
Been real.
Yeah,
Thank you.
take care.
Okay. Now we will be moving on to the oaths of office. I know, we have two new commissioners today, Kevin Kraus and Daniel Eastman.
All right, Kevin, I'm gonna start with you first. I want to make sure that the camera, the recording, gets to document this for posterity's sake. Oaths are very important to the sacredness of our democracy. And so if you don't mind repeating after me, hold up your hand, it's up to you. Whatever makes you feel solemn. So you can also read from here. I'll say it. I use the words for my voice for guidance. Okay. So I state your name. Do solemnly swear or affirm
I, Kevin Kraus, solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America and the state of Colorado,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America and the state of Colorado,
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Boulder,
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Boulder,
and faithfully perform the duties of the office of a member of the Boulder Junction Access District Travel Demand Management Commission.
faithfully perform the duties of the office of a member of the Boulder Junction Access District Travel Demand Management Commission,
Which I am about to enter.
out to enter.
All right, congratulations. You were sworn in as soon as you signed this form.
All right.
You need a pen. And if you would like to frame this and put it on the wall, wherever you like, or keep it for your scrapbook, you are welcome to do so.
My turn.
Congratulations, Kevin. Yes, Daniel,
All right.
you're next. We are going to combine your oath for both, because Daniel is going to be sitting on both TDM and parking. So you're not going to read from here exactly, because I'm going to add information from both.
Okay.
How does that sound? Are you ready?
That
for
sounds
this?
great. I hope I can do this right without reading.
All right. I, Daniel Eisman, do solemnly swear or affirm
I, Daniel Eisenman, do solemnly swear affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America and the state of Colorado
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America and of the state of Colorado
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Boulder,
and the charter and ordinances of the city of Boulder,
and faithfully perform the duties of the office of a member
and faithfully perform the duties of the office of a member
of the Boulder Junction Access District Travel Demand Management Commission and the Boulder Junction Access District Parking Commission,
of the Boulder Junction Access District Travel Demand Management Commission and the Boulder Junction Access District Parking Commission,
Beautiful,
which I'm about to enter.
lovely.
All right,
All right, congratulations. If you could sign this, and we'll hand it over to our board secretary, and you are now sworn in for your tour of duty. Oh, yes, sign, but you have to sign. All right, back to you, Madam Chair.
Fantastic. Okay, next matter will be the approval of March 2025 meeting minutes, which were distributed via email earlier. Do we have any comments on the last meeting minutes prior to approval? Okay, in that case, can we get a vote on that? I vote to approve.
Okay, good question.
Yes.
Do new committee members vote on last meeting?
Fantastic question.
And are the meeting
I
minutes-
haven't
Technically,
seen
yeah,
them.
technically, since you weren't in the meeting, we don't encourage you to vote on
Yeah.
whether they are
Yeah.
accurate. But maybe you watched the meeting and you reviewed them.
I reviewed the minutes, but no. I can say.
So,
Okay, thank you.
and you can vote or not vote. I don't think that,
Also,
Right.
abstention is also always an option, so that you log a vote, but you're
Yeah.
not saying yea or nay.
That makes sense. I'll abstain.
We now have a second,
And-
so,
I believe an abstention is also a yes, so, yeah, so you're good.
aye.
Aye.
2 ayes and off. There's no one else, so no nos. Okay. And same point, we have the approval of 5/25 special meeting minutes that we attended. Do you have any comments? Okay. I am moving that we approve them.
Second.
Okay,
Although I will clarify that I was not there.
Oh,
earlier. So
okay, well then you can
That's
also-
my.
well, as the
hesitation,
sole
but-
voting person, I
Yes.
approve them, I was there. Okay, and we are going to be now moving on to elections for chair and vice chair of BJAD parking. We have 2 members of BJAD parking.
We have
Three.
we have three.
Okay, so elections for chair and vice chair.
So this is on the agenda. I don't think it's been that long.
We keep
We
pushing it.
keep pushing it.
I think we
So
have
since we have new members, it's
Yeah.
important to make sure they have an opportunity to decide if they agree if either keep the current chair and vice, well, and we're losing a vice chair.
Yes. and we're-
So we definitely need, well, for parking, well, because Robin is our chair,
I'm the chair.
Oh, sorry, both vice chairs.
so,
It's okay.
and
I'm
we
happy
can just
to-
vote for parking today because we don't have the point for. TDM.
I am fine to continue as chair unless someone else would prefer to take the position.
Support.
You know,
Davis
it's
here.
too.
Okay, thank you. Now, who would like to be vice chair of parking?
Hopeful to have some new blood in here as a leadership position.
So what's involved in the vice chair position?
It's a fantastic question. So a chair would be the person who is basically running the portion of the meeting as I am right now. You'd also be calling for votes. And if I'm not here, that would fall to you.
I would note
Yeah.
that Rebecca is currently chair of TDM.
Mhm.
So typically, since we have a joint commission meeting, if you're not here, we would have her
I
run.
apologize.
And well, I would like to suggest, it's nice to nominate people when they aren't here. That maybe if you want to nominate Rebecca as vice chair of parking,
Oh.
then it's 2 birds, 1 stone. Unless Daniel, you are really chomping at the.
I am not the best at this kind of stuff.
Okay, so we're gonna nominate Rebecca as vice chair. Do we have to do separate votes?
You can do it all as one.
Okay, let's do chair, myself, vice chair Rebecca, and can we get call a vote on that?
So that's it for parking.
Yeah, because we also don't have a
Got it.
quorum
We're not
for
doing it.
TDM.
TDM. Okay, I make a motion to approve.
Okay. I second,
A second.
yes, any no's? Everybody else is here, okay, and TDM, we do not have a quorum as previously stated. And Chris, do you want to give us a recruitment update?
Yes, or actually,
What?
Ellie, are you, I'm happy to take it, or?
Yeah,
So we continue to recruit for the expired vacancies. And we've also have a new vacancy on TDM with Stephanie Pike's continued absence.
Yes.
City Council has elected to remove her from her seat, so that position will also be advertised in the round. Do we have any information on the dates of the current re-advertisement of?
I believe, applications open June 30th. And then that's kind of the only date I remember.
So once we are closer to the applications opening, we'll do another push. Also certainly encourage you all to inform your colleagues. We would like to relieve Kevin specifically because he's a bit over extended in his current term, but certainly appreciate the challenge, of course, with these commissions is the owner or owner representative requirement for 3 of the 5 seats on each commission. And so Kevin is able to serve in that role. And that's the hard demographic to find for this particular, these commissions. And so if you have relationships with folks who own in the Boulder Junction area, or know somebody who has a good relationship, who could be an owner representative. They don't have to own, they just need to be designated by proxy by an owner to serve on the commissions. That's our update on recruitment.
We have 2 new people.
Yes, exactly. And kind of 3 new people since Daniel's sitting on both of them too.
That's true.
Seems like our Travis Center, you know, it's 2 in 1.
Okay, we'd like to now open it up for public participation. Do we have any members of the public present that would like to participate at this time?
If you would like to participate online, you can raise your hand now.
Not seeing any raised hands.
Okay, as it does not seem like there's any members of the public that would like to participate at this time, we would now move on to the consent agenda. Do any of the commissioners have any questions about the consent agenda?
Actually, still have a good question around the voting here. Since I'm on TDM only, is it correct that I am not neither supposed to nor allowed to vote on parking matters? Okay, but then are there matters like approving minutes that are joined? Okay.
Yes,
So can someone make it clear when I'm allowed to or should
Absolutely.
vote on matters?
we'll let you know.
Thank you.
In this case, it's just a little weird since you were at the last meeting,
Yes.
but going forward,
Yes.
we will clarify.
Okay.
And the board secretary will, in the recording of the meeting, will make sure that things are clean on that side. So you are welcome to vote, but we'll make sure that in the actual, as things play out, that it doesn't misrepresent
Yes.
the actual quorum of the commission and the decision.
Okay, fantastic.
We will never let you accidentally vote.
Thank you. Yes.
Trust me, I've done it myself, so. Okay, I'm not hearing any matters on the consent agenda. We would next, do we have any comments on the current fund financials? Okay,
Is the budget a discussion topic or is it?
It is.
It is.
it is a
Okay, so
discussion
we're
topic.
gonna touch on that. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And next, we have an update from Will Shepherd on the Boulder Transportation Connections.
Hello, everyone. Is audio coming through clearly to everyone there in the studio? Very good. Happy to be here. welcome aboard, Kevin Kraus and Daniel. Kevin, now thank you for your continued tenure. It's great to see so many of your familiar faces. It's been a really long day so far, but I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to say that TDM in Boulder Junction is gaining more and more momentum. For Daniel and Kevin Kraus's context, I administer the benefits here on the TDM side in Boulder Junction. I also live here. I'm now on Left Street. So I have a everyday context in the neighborhood, and I'm seeing more and more engagement with the benefits that the city supports and that we help provide to residents and employees. It's hiring season, as it seems. My colleagues at NetApp and Splunk, which is now part of Cisco, are continually onboarding. So I've probably got 12 or 15 new EcoPass requests in from the business context. And wow, the lease cycle in the Spark community where I live and at Pearl Parkway and Junction Place, this is the place to be. I've probably activated 30 EcoPasses in the last 2 weeks. So a lot of folks are moving and working within the district. One of the most joyful updates that I hear is we are now coordinating with RTD and a few city staff for an official reopening of the RTD station. It will be Boulder Junction at Depot Square. Early September, we are in the process of getting approval and final details for a community celebration. Early September, I've seen a date, but that's not solidified yet. So I'll be happy to share that at our meeting. I believe that would be in July, and would love everyone's participation in coming out to celebrate and spreading the word, because it's a really big occasion that marks efforts from all of the stakeholders in our community. Transportation Connections is just one part of that. So it's a big celebration in that regard. There has been extensive public engagement here within the district and across the city for the North 30th Core Arterial Network, and they've reached a final design proposal that is actually being held in 32 minutes from 5 to 7 today at Junkyard Social, just a bit east on Pearl Parkway. If anyone has capacity or folks within the district or that travel along 30th Street, I think that would be excellent to garner a little bit more feedback before that goes to City Council for final approval. It's definitely the primary corridor within the district, and we are excited to see what's proposed in coming down the pipeline in terms of infrastructure development here in the district. There are a few other commuter rail surveys that are being developed, and we'll start distributing those throughout the next few months, because Boulder Junction is certainly intended as the core onboarding and alighting platform for the commuter rail that will connect Longmont and Denver in the years to come. Bike to Work Day is one of the highlights of all of the work that we are doing, and we have committed stations from Logan's Cafe on Junction Place and Cassiopeia at 34th and Meredith. So we're expecting hundreds of cyclists to pass through. I should amend that. We're expecting hundreds of commuters to pass through the district specifically that morning, and it is being branded by the entire regional group as both Walk and Bike to Work Day on June 25th. So we're seeing the modes expand beyond just a bike, and we're really happy to see that. For the reference of the group, without any finality, we are looking at expanding, at least a potential for expansion of the TDM benefits to include scooters. And that is a process that is in development right now. And I think we feel very hopeful that this will be possible, but it's not confirmed yet. Happy to share that update on a subsequent commission's meeting. And one of our key outreach and engagement efforts right now is our June quarterly convening. So for Kevin Kraus and Daniel's reference, Boulder Chamber of Transportation Connections has quarterly luncheons, which we've done for a long time. In the middle of June, we are elevating that experience to look at the history of transportation in Boulder and really leaning into what's potential, both in Boulder Junction and citywide. So I'm happy to field questions and see if it feels appropriate to share among the group. but we are actively promoting a June 18th event among the Boulder Junction community and citywide, and would love to inform each of you with a link to our event RSVP if that pleases the group. Happy to stick around for Q&As and comments at this time.
Well, that's really exciting news about the RTD station.
I have a vision for a ribbon cutting that involves a bus passing through a ribbon. We'll see if we're able to fulfill that.
I don't see any questions from commissioners, so I believe we are on to matters from staff.
All right, moving right along, right on time. First, we have a Boulder Junction parking analysis report from Sam Bromberg. You might recall, we've been talking at length about some of the access-related challenges businesses and residents have been experiencing in the Boulder Junction area. Sam and team have been taking a look at parking and access infrastructure utilization, and we're exploring recommendations. And so Sam's going to share some work, and you had a memo to review. Hopefully you had time to take a look at that, but Sam's going to give you a high-level overview of the work so far.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks everyone for having me tonight. My name's Samantha Bromberg, as Chris said, I go by Sam. I'm the senior project manager with Community Vitality, and I focus on access and parking related projects. So this presentation and the memo included in your packet materials provides an overview of current on-street and off-street garage parking conditions in the Boulder Junction Access District, as well as considerations and recommendations to support more efficient and equitable parking management as the area continues to grow. So we'll be looking at existing conditions, findings, staff recommendations. We'll take questions from commissioners, and then we'll review next steps. Boulder Junction is a growing mixed-use areas with a mix of homes, businesses, offices, hotel, and shops. And as it gets closer to full build out and more people move in or start working here, as Will mentioned, we're seeing an uptick. It's important to get a clear picture of how parking is being used today so that we can plan smarter for the future. To guide our analysis, we looked at a few key existing conditions, which include residential and commercial uses, off-street parking, on-street parking, depot square garage permits and utilization, and frequently heard challenges. Since the district is a member of the Depot Square Ownership Association, we have the most influence over the Depot Square garage. That's where we focused our efforts because it's a place where we have the greatest ability to make some meaningful changes. Boulder Junction has about 2,359 off-street parking spaces for about 1,400 or more homes and over 400,000 square feet of commercial space, enough to support well more than 3,000 people living and working in the area. The district was originally designed, as you know, for low car ownership with a focus on walking, biking, and transit. But in reality, a lot of people still rely on their cars for everyday life. The total number of parking spaces may look okay on paper, but because many are tied to specific buildings or tenants, they're not always easy to access. So the real issue is that people can't always find a space where and when they need one, not necessarily that there's not that there's a lack of parking. Parking tends to work a little bit better on the south side of Pro Parkway where there's more dedicated off-street supply, but on the north side where many buildings don't have much or any off-street parking, it's a little bit more strained, especially as the area fills in and more people move in. Moving forward, how we manage and share the parking we already have will be key to making it work better for everyone. On-street parking in Boulder Junction is challenging due to a mix of rules. Some blocks have paid time-limited parking right next to free or privately managed areas. This map shows how it breaks down. So blue sections are paid and managed. The red is unmanaged, meaning free and no time limits or anything. And then the green is privately managed blocks. There's also some privately managed lots over there on the west side. The paid blocks tend to have pretty low utilization, under 60% occupancy. Likely because there's nearby free options, as you can see, just adjacent to where there's paid parking. And those unmanaged blocks are much higher in occupancy. Generally, we're seeing more 60-80%, and sometimes they're completely full. One thing of note for this area is that Transportation and Mobility is planning to roll out flexible loading zones on some of the paid and managed blocks, those are the ones in blue, in late 2025. Those flexible loading zones will support short-term uses such as deliveries, rideshare, service vehicles, anything that's going to be under 15 minutes curb. So that's hopefully going to cut down on some of the double parking that we see and make the curb use a little bit more efficient. Residential Access Management Program, or RAMP. Currently, there is a petition underway to create a neighborhood permit parking or NPP zone in Boulder Junction. Some of you may have heard. We have around 20 of the required 25 signatures that have been submitted on this petition. Our threshold is 25. Once we reach 25, we will send that petition as well as preliminary data collection to City Council as part of our annual RAMP report. If Council gives that the green light, then we will put together a proposal likely sometime next year if we can hit that threshold before the end of year. And with that proposal, we will kick off a public engagement process. So we'll notify all of the folks in the impacted area. We hold a public hearing at the Transportation Advisory Board and invite residents to weigh in at that public hearing. If TAB, which is the Transportation Advisory Board, approves the proposal, it will go to City Council for a final decision. If we were to implement an NPP in Boulder Junction, we would add permit parking on top of the current existing parking schemes. So whether that's paid parking or unmanaged parking, we would have permanent parking. We would likely still have some blocks that would be reserved for paid parking only to make sure that we're accounting for the needs of the businesses there. But we offer permits within the permitting section to residents, their guests, in commuters, and temporary uses like contractors. So we do try to accommodate for all use types, even with a residential permit program, or as we call it, an
This could apply to any street or more on the residential streets.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have not created the proposal yet. But if we created a proposal, we would likely be evaluating which streets are gonna make sense for having residential permits and which streets are gonna make sense to stay their current paid and time managed. So likely that's gonna end up looking something like if the streets are on a commercial strip where there's no residences that like have direct access to that street, we'll probably recommend that they stay paid and time limited versus the streets that have, you know, residential uses like directly leading out to that street. Then we might introduce a limited number of permits. We would likely need to cap the number of total permits for the area just because we want to make sure that there's not more demand than supply of parking. If you issue more permits than there are parking spaces, and you're not really doing anything to manage it. So there would need to be a lot of thought process into this particular proposal. But I just wanted to make sure that the commission was kind of aware of the ongoings of the MPP program and the current petition, because it would have the potential to help support the existing paid on-street parking program, right? If everything is then paid, people are less likely to crowd into the free neighborhood. They're gonna be more likely to pay for parking.
So just out of curiosity, I don't know how long the paid parking has been around since the beginning of the district, but we have a lot of empty storefronts over there, and some of the businesses are starting to come up. Paid parking is sort of a detriment to a mixed-use district and creating the patronage. Has ever been discussed of eliminating paid parking for a while to attract people to the district? And can it be considered?
So, thanks for the question. The decisions around curbside management in this area are all guided by the Transit Village Area Plan that was adopted by City Council back in
2017.
2017.
No, 2007, sorry,
Yeah.
I knew there was a 7.
And so that's all managed through plan development services. And that's what guides the decisions and the policies that are implemented in within the boundaries of that plan, from land use changes and all of the changes, the transformations that you've seen over the last 20 or 15 years. So if that plan were to change, if that would be a council decision to change the policy. On parking.
Could that be an amendment in the comprehensive plan comment that it falls on this group? Manage parking, actual manage it rather than by a document that's obsolete from 2007?
So, can certainly recommend that you participate in the comprehensive planning
Sure.
conversation. And whether or not that comes up as a policy shift, yet to be determined.
It doesn't this group make recommendations to the comprehensive plan too, or?
I mean, as it pertains to the decisions of the district, there might be an opportunity. I'm not sure if there's anything on the calendar right now for planning to come to any of the commissions other than planning board. Planning board and city council are they have the legal jurisdiction over those documents, including the transit village area plan. This commission can certainly provide input that influences their quasi judicial responsibilities in those decisions, but we're not the deciders.
I think you'll find too, if we get to the end of the presentation, I've got some suggestions around that to make it a little bit more friendly, so maybe they address some of your concerns, maybe they don't, but certainly, like Chris said, there are opportunities to participate in the comp plan process.
And we do have about,
TVAP in I'm sorry, Chris, I mean, TVAP in general. It is a little obsolete, and it was put into, adopted before any of this was built out, and so. I don't know if we consider TVAP more of like anything more than like a guiding document. Which, you know, the district wasn't built out exactly the way it was envisioned. With different street connections and the amount of units and everything else, the way that it may have been envisioned in 2007. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's. I mean, how would it relate to even the comprehensive plan? Because as an area plan as opposed to the comp plan, completely separate,
area
right?
plans are
So-
subsets of the comp.
Okay, and so is TVAP still like a living portion considered a part of the comp plan?
So I would also add, and I would love to let Sam finish her presentation. The elements of paid parking. Anybody can have free parking if a business wants to validate parking for their customers. That's certainly a program that we have in the downtown that we would like to make more readily available in other areas where we have managed parking. But the concept of shared and bundled managed paid parking has been longtime part of our overall success in our key commercial areas. So I don't know that city council would be interested in moving away from that approach to managing.
And just to clarify what I was suggesting, I think it's just a period of time where the district actually attracts people. And the businesses become a business, right? That, you know, you give a period of 1.5 years, 2 years, that there is free parking here and people are coming, and then you bring it back. It's sort of like a break.
I mean, I think there could be a case to be made that TVAP, as much as it calls for in one portion paid parking, it also calls for a very vibrant, active area. And that's something that I think the district's definitely challenged by. I mean, a lack of empty storefronts, a lot of commercial vacancy. So, and then I think the history is that the street parking wasn't always paid. I forget the exact year, but I mean, TVAP adopted in 2007. Paid parking went on sometime when I came on this district board.
Well, there was some paid parking.
Maybe some
much
before that.
then.
I would say
Yeah.
As the
2019.
developments, well, it's been, as developments have come online, so it's been associated with the transition in land uses is when the paid parking
In the history is, and Sam, sorry,
No, no, you're fine.
give it back, yeah, just to bring Daniel up to speed. I mean, the history really was is that streets were full, and then paid parking came on and cleared them all up. And we don't, not to say that those businesses were in place and there's a direct correlation there, but it's easy to find a space, so to speak, if you like to pay for it. Thank you.
Okay, narrowing in on the Depot Square garage, which as I mentioned earlier, we have slightly more control over than on-street parking here, on your commission. So, the Depot Square garage has 392 parking spaces. It serves a variety of users, including visitors, residents, hotel guests, and RTD riders. This table shows the different entities that make up the owners association, which the district is one of them. Along with how many spaces each one has access to. One thing of note is, there is a company named Cushman and Wakefield. They manage several key residential and commercial properties in Boulder Junction. Because they oversee so much of the district, you'll see that a large share of the garage spaces are leased to them for use by their tenants. Right now, they aren't using all of those spaces, but that is in part due to a number of vacancies in commercial spaces that they manage, which include the large office space that was previously occupied by Twitter. Oops, that's the wrong direction. When we looked at how the Depot Square garage was being used in April, we found it was pretty consistently underutilized, averaging just about 17% full, with a peak just over 26%. That's only about 65 cars parked on average in the 392 space garage. Part of that could be due to the RTD service that stopped back in 2020, as you know, and could return or will return hopefully in September, as we've just heard. But in the meantime, the garage has a lot of unused potential capacity, which presents an opportunity to better match available parking with the needs of the district. Some common themes that we heard when we spoke to a number of different stakeholders in the district included not enough parking for commercial tenants or for their visitors, that the time limited on-street parking makes it tough for residents and guests of residents. Property managers mentioned that it's tricky to find space for moving trucks, and that public parking, especially how to access the garage, is not always clear to visitors. The staff recommendations based on our analysis are: first, we could explore purchasing RTD 75 garage spaces. If you recall from 2 slides back when I showed you the allocation of space, 75 belong to RTD. If we were to purchase those spaces, it would open up more permits for local businesses, in commuters and residents, which would be helpful since there's still about 182,000 square feet of vacant commercial space in Boulder Junction. One thing to note is if we did pursue this route, RTD users would need to either pay hourly to park in that garage, purchase a permit, or use other ways to, get to the station itself. They wouldn't have access to free parking. Our second recommendation is to pilot an oversell of permits in the garage. This is a really common approach since not everyone uses their permit every day, especially with more people working hybrid or remote. If we could oversell permits by even 10%, we could help boost use without a whole lot of risk. Our third recommendation is that we can improve signage and tools to show how many spaces are available in time. Better signs at key decision points and syncing with parking apps or mobility tools could make it easier for drivers to find a spot and feel more confident about using the garage. So I don't know if you've pulled into 1500 Pro Garage, we have those variable messaging signs outside. Not only can they communicate in real time how many spaces are available in the garage, but we can also play different messages on them. So if there's like a special event that's going to be coming, for example, this weekend's Boulder Creek Fest downtown, we can put up a sign that says, welcome Boulder Creek Fest is on today or something. So a lot of cool technology we can use there. Our fourth recommendation is to offer free parking on weekends to help draw more people out to shop, eat, or hang out in the area, which is what we do in our downtown Boulder parking garages. So this gets to your point of, you know, trying to make the area a little bit more friendly for shoppers and diners and visitors, and hopefully be able to attract more businesses that way as well. Since most of the revenue from the garage is actually being derived from permits currently, it wouldn't have a particularly large financial impact to offer free parking just on the weekends, and it could help activate those local businesses. Our final recommendation is, if we are, this is an if we do pursue acquiring and are able to acquire RTV spaces, we could set some aside for residents of the area. We can offer some discounted permits to those who qualify based on income. The idea there being, you know, if you are not income qualified, the standard rate would still be the $150 per month, which is what it is currently. If you are income qualified, it would be a $75 per month rate, which is what they charge at those Depot Square apartments. So keeping that consistent. And I think that would be particularly helpful for some of the residents of that area, especially with the new buildings coming online, Boulder Commons, and for 30 Pearl, which does have some dedicated off-street parking, but not as many as there are dwelling units. And all that was in that as well. So I've got these questions for commissioners, our parking commissioners, which is, do you have any questions about the proposed recommendations? And then do you support moving forward with any or all of the proposed recommendations? Let me get to next steps and then I'll come back to this slide if that's okay. So just right now, we're seeking feedback from commissioners on these recommendations. Based on that, we'll put together a proposed timeline and implementation plan. At the same time, we're going to be keeping an eye on the NPP, which again is sort of like happening on a separate track, right? That's not something that's dictated by this commission, but we're hopeful that that petition does reach the 25 required signatures so that we can move forward. We think that will be really, really helpful in this area to be able to kind of manage it a little bit more consistently across the district. And again, that would go in our annual report to the council. One other really big update, which you maybe have heard about, is that the garage is planning to convert over to Metropolis by the end of Q3 of this year. For those of you who don't know, if you've driven into this garage here at 1500 Pearl or any of the other downtown garages, we use a platform called Metropolis to administer the paid parking. It's really convenient because you drive in, you park, you register your plate. You only have to register for the system once. You put in your credit card information, and then anytime you want to park in any of the Metropolis garages, not only in Boulder, but in other locations too, you never have to take out your phone again. You just drive in, drive out, it's connected to your plate. So it's like a super seamless system, and they do validations really, really well. So I think it could be a huge benefit to those commercial businesses who are looking to offer some kind of validations for their customers. So that's a big deal, and we're excited for that transition. So I'll switch back to this question slide, and if the chair would like to start us off.
So I have, I'm very happy with the recommendations as they are. I guess one follow-up question I have is really to Daniel's point. I think that we all share our concerns about local businesses and making sure that they're set up to succeed. I also have my own concerns about going purely free parking with over usage in certain streets. So I love the idea of free parking on the weekends as a way of maybe kind of finding a mean between those two things. I guess my question is, with the work we've been doing with local businesses, is there any effort that we'd be doing to advertise alongside those local businesses about the fact that there will be free parking on the weekends to maybe help drive traffic to the area during that time frame? And if so, what would be involved with that? And can any portion of the budget be worked towards that as well?
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. We've certainly done marketing campaigns in the past for different garages, for example, when we transitioned to Metropolis downtown, we did a really comprehensive marketing campaign. We actually got 20,000 people to register for the system before it even went live. So there's a lot we can do when it comes to marketing and communications, and that's another reason why having something like a digital variable messaging sign, like the ones that are at this garage, can be helpful, because on the weekends we have a program to say free parking. So it's like really big. So if we could put those in really key areas where people can see it, it's another indicator of like, hey, we're open for business, we're friendly, we want you to come here. So definitely open to those suggestions, and in terms of budget, that's an Ellie question, but
We have, one of those programs currently happening. We partnered with Downtown Boulder Partnership downtown here. In order to offer or to promote the free parking in the garages on the weekend. So that does currently exist. Just now. Do we have any data of how that's working out? It just rolled out. So no, we do not yet. have
no, but I will tell you that based on just
that. Anecdotal.
well, no, it's not anecdotal, it's database, but having like had my hands in the data for a long time when it comes to parking and access in Boulder, I can tell you our downtown garages are much more utilized on the weekends than they are during the weekdays. And that shift is like a pre-COVID or a post-COVID shift that we've seen. But we do see people taking advantage of it, people know about it, people like often tell us that they know about it and that they love it and they don't want us to ever take it away. So it's a big driver, I would say. It definitely, I think it helps with that perception of being friendly to folks coming in, shop and spend money there.
Question, go ahead. How much are we talking about to purchase 75 spaces from RTV? And not, I don't understand the finances, how much money is saved, kind of thing, so.
So our original 100 spaces was $2.4 million. So, and that was for 10 years ago. So it's not a small amount.
Yeah, but it's, I mean, building a new garage is like 4 times more, right?
Yeah.
And, so.
I mean, how do you value it? I mean, do you value it on a replacement cost, or do you value it on you're buying the income there? There's no income.
Right. So what does that mean for RTA? Are they open to this?
We've not explored extensively with them, but it's similar to the arrangement that we have in the downtown Boulder station, where the city, KJID owns the parking above the downtown Boulder station. The arrangement back when this facility was built was, we knew we needed parking, and we knew we needed partnership in order to make parking possible there. But if RTD owns parking, it comes with a lot of strings that make it hard to manage and optimize the utilization of those spaces. So
RTD is not allowed per state statute to sell permits for their parking spaces. So the way that their parking spots can be used is limited.
So how does somebody use the RTD space versus our space? How does anybody know anything?
So when the station was open, so they're virtual spaces. They're not like, it's like, these are the district spaces. If you are an RTD parker, there was a validation screen in the transit station in the basement. You needed to put your license plate information into, and that's how you were logged as an RTD parker. And then that would determine that if there was any revenue associated with that transaction, if your stay was longer than 2 days, or you were an out-of-district parker, then the system logs the revenue to RTD as opposed to another entity.
And have you talked to brokers about whether there is a need for parking, or people are complaining there's not enough parking for these offices
Yes.
to make it more attractive?
That there is significant interest from Cushman Wakefield, as I mentioned, to purchase additional permits. There's also, I think would be interest from residential as well. Just knowing that Boulder Commons is just now coming online, and there are not enough parking. There are less parking spaces than dwelling units. So it's very reasonable to expect that some of those parkers may wish to purchase a residential permit as well. I think if we opened 75 spaces, that Cushman Wakefield would purchase all 75 of them if we let them. So I'm not worried about whether or not we'll be able to sell permits, if that makes sense, but we still need to balance all of the different users of the district and make sure that we have some parking available for people just coming in for the day, right? So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. And so there's, in a way, guaranteed revenue if we want it to be guaranteed.
Right.
Right, this
I-
diversity is prohibited by legislation to take advantage of the opportunity to sell in these spaces.
Yeah, we didn't want to approach RTD unless we knew that we had support of the commission to even engage in those conversations.
So if we have, I mean, you look at the peak parking from the study and that peak parking, we're at 26% utilization. I mean, we could oversell permits. I mean, you mentioned 10%, but really 2x or 3x before ever run into a problem.
Right, I mean, we would want to be cautious in our approach because. Things are rapidly changing in the district. I mean, as Will said, there's new folks moving in every single day. And so we don't want to like be overzealous in our oversell of the permits in case the utilization does increase, as I mentioned, Cushman Wakefield. Who holds releases on a number of those permits. They're not using all of them yet because there's still spaces, commercial spaces that are vacant that are gonna be coming online, and so they're holding on to them for when those folks come in, so. That's why I suggested like, being a little cautious and in oversell, but yeah, certainly, I mean, over the next couple of years, we can continue to adjust it and tweak it. And see where it needs to be.
Currently, the city, our standards right now in the downtown area is a 10% oversale. Which I think is why Sam started there.
And these passes are guaranteed year over year, or you can retract them.
So-
From the first,
The,
after X years.
they're monthly, but they will, well, yeah, they will be monthly as soon as Metropolis kind of takes over the garage, but essentially. They're yours until either you stop paying for them or you tell, the parking management, whether it's Metropolis or us or whoever you're leasing it from, that you no longer want it. So,
As long as you keep paying their years, you can't retract a parking bus.
It's not a great customer service.
We try not to do that.
yeah, but you do bring up a good point because, we've had this happen downtown where. Folks hold on to their permits for a really long time, even if they're not using them. And so that can, that's part of the reason why we're always looking at those oversell numbers and we're looking at utilization constantly because. We want to make sure that we're using these assets to serve as many people as we can in the best way possible.
Can there be a clause if it's not used over 6 months, you have to give it back, or we have the option to take it away?
We've explored that, if there's a wait list, for permits. Currently, we don't have really very many wait lists in our downtown, so it's something we've explored. Could also be a pricing strategy where you can keep it, but it's like the vacant home, tax. If you're not using it, you can keep it, but it's gonna get more expensive.
Yeah, we don't currently have that strategy that you're talking about, but we're open to it and exploring it for other assets that we have.
I don't know if we want to take a look at the recommendations one by one, or how we'd like to discuss them through. I think, brief before we do for mine, I mean, I really like 2 through 5 as a way of inducing demand and getting things rolling. I think there's probably a larger discussion about whether that's the best use of the district's budget to buy spaces, given the utilization rates.
To your point, I think it's a fair discussion about, how long does it take for us to break even on the 2.4? But or we don't actually know on the number at this.
Maybe
point.
RTD would just give it to us since they've delivered on so many other investments.
100%, that's
Sorry,
it.
we were closed for so long.
I mean, I mean, there's also, I had, I guess my follow-up questions to that would always be, you know, what would happen? Just because of my experience in working in parking in the past, like what is our obligation for maintenance and upkeep and other things that we might be creating ongoing budgetary item for the district if we were to engage in that? I don't know what I don't know there. I do know that upkeep alone can be substantial. At the same time, it's a legitimate concern, is having access to parking. So I don't think it's a purely financial question, because I think that financial concern affects cost of housing and livability and also the business of the area. But to your point, I do think it's actually fair to look at these individually, because I kind of feel like there's a likelihood that 80% of what's up on the screen is like a pure consensus most people are going to be on board with. What are y'all's thoughts on that? Are you okay if we say, that's awesome, we approve of that, but maybe not all of it at this point?
Yeah, well, we're just looking for feedback now, unless if all three parking commissioners are just say over my dead body. The three, well, it's parking only, so you're if half of Daniel, if you're over my dead body, that this is anything that you would ever consider. That is good input.
2 through 4, I'm 100%. I think all of those are wonderful recommendations, and 1 I'm completely open to. But I'm not 100%.
More, yeah.
I just want more data on what our obligations would be.
I mean, one of my biggest concerns to that and to all this, the Daniel's earlier points and to Robin's as well, is that I'd like to see some investment in the north end of the district.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, to everyone's points and Chris, your points about, you know, paying and everything. If you go into Sundry, if you go into Cassiopeia, you know, if you go into any of those northern retail shops, there's no way under any circumstance you're gonna park in that garage. How do we support those businesses? I think that's the biggest, how do we not only support those businesses, but fill those empty retail? You know, so I want to see investment in that and in solving that problem before we double down on buying spaces in an empty garage.
Yeah, just a vibrant district is a district that you see cars. That every parking spot on the street is taken, and that's the case right here on the east end or on the west end, right? Like if you see a lot of cars, it's like, okay, this is vibrant, something's happening over here. So if that would be free, then encourages people to go there, and then all of a sudden encourages people to go and park in the garage because that's the only option. And that's how you start making money. So not the on-street parking, but on the garage. So to the degree that we can support all those businesses in that part of the district with some free options, then, you know, it'll push people to the garage because there's no other place to park.
And so just to comment on it, the commission, unfortunately, by ordinance, does not have any.
Understand.
And so we do have control, the commission does have control over recommendations for how we manage the district-owned spaces in the garage or any other district-owned assets. Not the on-street spaces. And so the dynamic is challenging because that's where we have control over pricing. Incentives would be in the garage only.
So just so I understanding that the scope is limited for us. Is there an advice that we can give council, like we were talking about on this matter, that, hey, consider this at least? This is what we're gonna do, we'll consider this. Should certainly, we can inform the Boulder Rally comprehensive plan and participate in all that. But seems like parking is, you know, is a full equation, right? So, anyway. But trying to, ultimately, how do we support the businesses? How do we bring more people here? That's what we need to do. And certainly the signage on a parking garage that says free, that'll help.
Just going back to the north end, there is a public parking garage. It's not owned by the city. It's not managed by the city. It's privately owned garage that offers public parking spaces, and it is right by Cassiopeia, that little shop there. So there is some public parking there. But it's not under.
And but it is part of the parking portfolio of the district that we could, do more work around marketing and wayfinding,
Right.
around those assets.
And I don't know the current status of that and be interesting. Maybe I can help figure out that occupancy in that garage, but. If there was. Interest in the district buying spaces on that garage.
Certainly in the realm of possibility that's, the Cages has done that before, purchased structured parking garages from commercial developments.
It's that, some information is in your packet, but from my understanding, talking like, it's like underneath the timber building. It's shared between residents. They do sell permits for some of the commercial buildings nearby, and then they have public parking, so it's a shared model. And it's a decent sized garage, there's quite a bit of parking there, so. That could certainly be a recommendation of the board or the commission to staff, is to explore, either marketing strategies or other opportunities.
So I'd say maybe on item number 1, instead of being specific to RTD's 75 spaces in the Depot Square garage, it's exploration of purchasing or leasing parking in the district that allows us to better enhance access opportunities for businesses and others.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, and that sounds great, and then I would just add, ways to support few retail. Locations that are there, and how to attract more. I think those are. Most spaces that were vacant for a long time for a variety of reasons. But I mean, how do we, the restaurants and the vitality that we really thought was coming was the little kind of neighborhood taco shop and the ice cream shop and all that. That there just hasn't been much interest around. And I don't know, I mean, it'd be nice to support those current and future retail tenants.
All right.
I like your alteration there, to have slightly more expanded information on that. Unless I'm mistaken, I think the rest of the commissioners would appreciate that as well. Just so that we have some feedback for the staff on this matter, are we pretty much in agreement, though, that there's pretty broad support for items 2 through 5?
Yeah, for me.
And I think more information on 1 and costs associated with that, and not just purchasing, but also operating on the
What are our options?
Yeah, and it's interesting, as much as paid parking is a part of our, some principles there, so is our shared parking. It seems like there's a lot of room to share more permits based on the current utilization rate, so.
All right. Hey, which needs Sam?
Yeah, thanks everyone for your time and feedback.
It's very well.
Yeah, it's a great, nice work.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll shift over to 2026 budget planning. Elliot has a high-level overview of our upcoming budget process, which will be reviewed for our longer time commissioners and new for newer commissioners, and some preliminary thoughts on where we're moving with the district budgets. So Elliot, over to you.
Thanks. Good evening, commissioners. Just as Chris mentioned, kind of going into the 2026 budget development. Traditionally, this is when the city starts doing budget development is well, right now. Here's a little bit of a timeline of what happened when. Apologize for the small font. Hopefully this was included in your packet. You can kind of see a little bit more of the details. Really where we're at, May 23rd, this Friday, is our next coming up deadline. So that's really not significantly changing anything within the budget in terms of enhancements or in terms of decreases or increases. This is more just taking, what do we have status quo and does it need to be put in different buckets for spending purposes? So that's where we're at now. The next one is June 27th, which will incorporate the changes that we have discussed a little bit here at our commission meetings in terms of like Are we going to be exploring a mill levy reduction? What does that look like to the fund financials? Are we gonna explore doing a capital improvement with parking signage, increase in parking revenue, those types of things? So that'll all come more with the June 27th deadline for those types of things. July commission meetings is when we're gonna discuss basically the final submission that we have gotten, or we have, I guess, more given to the executive budget team, team of city manager's office, as well as some of our directors, in terms of what we're suggesting for the 2026 budget, as well as the 2026 through 2031 CIP. So you will all have that information in the July commission meetings, and at that point, we'll be asking you for a recommendation moving forward to city council. That'll be both for TDM and for parking. And then in the full city side, September 11th is when they're planning to have the first study session of the budget. So council will be looking over the entire budget for the entire city. Some may have some questions about districts, just kind of TBD on what they decide to jump into. And then the first reading, which is really the change of the ordinance to actually appropriate the funds, happens on October 9th. However, it's not until October 23rd that the district budgets actually get officially voted on by the board of directors, i.e. city council, for the appropriation in 2026. So come November 1st, we should have a solidified budget, all things pending. Any questions so far? Cool. So looking at kind of where we were for last year's performance, so I'm going to start every slide for every section starts with parking. So hooray for those who made it to parking today. TDM will follow. It's just alphabetical, no preference here. But if we're looking here at the prior year revenue performance for parking, you can see property taxes continue to outperform what we anticipate. A lot of that has to do with the developments coming on and those assessment rates actually applying to the new developments. Property taxes are quite a bit in the rear. The assessment rate doesn't happen except for every 2 years. And then once a building actually gets reassessed, that assessment rate doesn't actually take effect until the next tax year, which doesn't get collected to the next year after that. So it's very much in arrears. We tried to buffer in some of this with the pilot payments when new developments were coming online, a payment in lieu of taxes for people who either join the district or for those kind of catch-up fees for once the parcel went from a certain amount to a new developed amount, which help us collect revenue, provide those TDM benefits faster. Parking did not have a pilot catch-up. Parking revenue, I will take a note here and say it looks like it's doing crazy. That is timing of payments. So we actually receive our revenue from the Condo Owners Association. We do not collect it directly. So we have to work with them to remit a check to us for the parking revenue as part of a member of the Condo Owners Association. And the timing of those payments was a little off for 2023 and they spilled into 2024. So that's why it looks like it's so amazing. And maybe it will continue to be amazing like that if we do increase our parking permits. Investment earnings and specific ownership and tax came in pretty well at projected. Similar story at TDM. Of course, we don't have actual parking revenue here in TDM. The property tax growth wasn't as great in terms of what we were expecting versus what came in. A little bit has to do with, I think some of the developments happened maybe a little bit more within the parking and less in the TDM, even though they overlap. On the expense side, good news is we came under projected. So it's always good to come over projected in revenue and under projected in expenses if you're going to be off by anything. We'd love to be right on the nose, but that's always difficult. But the bad news is on the capital improvement side, specifically for parking, we did not spend a whole lot of capital, actually no capital improvement dollars in parking. Part of that is because we're waiting to make sure we have a good capital plan moving forward before we actually act on it. And things like the signage at the Depot Square parking garage would certainly be one of those. Christine, I don't know if you remember off the top of your head how much these lollipop signs
No dice, sir. I
I
do
think
not
they were
remember.
like 50 a piece. They were pretty pricey. But anyways, I digress. On the TDM side, very similar. We do have some economic vitality and district management funding for that program within TDM. And we did spend some pretty decent dollars there. The activations that we had down in Boulder Junction were in part because of that. But you can see we did not spend what we anticipated. I will say this year, given the commercial areas blueprint and the district analysis, because of the impacts to Boulder Junction and what we're trying to do with Boulder Junction, whether it's a combination of the districts, whether it's a new district, whether it's a change of mill levy, any of those types of things, all of those studies are also being funded by Boulder Junction. So we'll see some costs come out of both parking and TDM to help cover costs.
In part by Boulder Junction.
Yes.
Did I say in full?
No,
It
you
was
didn't, you
just
just, it
phrased
was
in a way that it could
ambiguous.
have been.
Oh, yes, they're not paying for the whole thing. They're paying for
They
a portion.
contributing to it, yes.
A contributing partner with the other districts. So fund balances. So what is the projections in revenue and actuals in revenue and expenses, et cetera, look like in terms of fund balance? The beginning fund balance there on the left, was what there's the projected versus actuals. Of course, not a lot of change there. The fund balance shouldn't have changed a whole lot. The only thing that would have is any sort of weird year-end accruals that we didn't capture during the development of these fund financials. We didn't really have any. The ending fund balance changed though because of our increase in revenue over projections and our decrease in expenses over projections. So that's why we have a little bit higher ending fund balance than what we anticipated. Question on that?
Yes, I guess my question is, so basically, we're looking at the revenue on a cash basis, like not an accrual basis for 2025. That's why it looks disproportionately higher, because we're actually just like
This
the
is
cash
all-
that came in.
This is all 2024.
Okay, sorry, so 2024, but this is like, because we also got payments in from 2023 though.
Yeah, so.
Do
it's
we
a
know what
cash
the numbers would
basis.
actually be if it
If
was
it was
just like what was earned within the year?
Well, going back to the parking revenue that came in, so you can see, we anticipated about 80,000 and we brought in about 210,000. Of that, probably about 80,000 came in from 2023. So it would have technically been about, instead of 220, about 140. Which is a little bit closer, but it's
So we
still
still overperformed, but just not as substantially.
correct.
Okay.
So then TDM's fund balance, similar story, ending fund balance is a little bit higher than projected due to those increases in revenues, especially in property taxes, and then decreases on the expense side. So where are we going? So these three columns represent 2025 adopted. So basically what we put forward in 2024 as what we anticipated to create revenue and also expenses. Right now, we're looking at the source of funds, so the revenue. The 2025 projected is basically, do we have any changes since then that we have put forward? And then the 2026 draft is what we're developing right now. So again, the draft does not include any changes in the mill levy because we're still kind of TBD on those directions, and especially in terms of where the district goes. So we have a lot of work ahead of us in the next month and a half. To really get our heads wrapped around that and how that would impact the fund financials going forward. So that's kind of what these three columns represent, again, on the source of funds. Property taxes, we are anticipating some growth there, and mainly because those assessment rates are coming in. But we do have a little bit of headwinds in property taxes across the entire city, not just Boulder Junction, with what has happened at the state legislative level, and then also some of the assessment rates on some of the properties actually came in lower this year. So as property owners, you probably know, as you got some of your assess reports, that they came in lower. Unless you're looking at it.
Quick question.
Yeah.
What's the delta though, if the mill levies were reduced or go away, or is that, are we getting there?
So we're not gonna get to it in this slide, but I will say it's a ratio base. So as we decrease the, well, let's see, parking is 10%. So, or sorry, 10 mils. So if we were to say hypothetically cut it down to 5 mils, we would look at basically a 50% reduction in the parking portion of the the revenue.
Okay.
Some of that has a little bit of a caveat because the state legislative level in terms of revenue collection and revenue limits, but there's not a lot of really limits at parking or TDM.
So is that approximately 50K in the circumstance?
If I remember doing the analysis, each single mill levy drop was about a $30 savings per $500,000 residential per person. So extrapolated across all of the properties, I'd have to run the numbers on that, but it's not a huge cost savings to the property owners unless the property owner is very large. And but there is a decent decrease in revenue from that. So 500K is what we're looking at parking. If we were to decrease it to 5 mills, there may be a place where we're getting closer to that 250, 300.
Okay.
So that obviously has a big impact on fund balance going forward. And given the discussion tonight about does parking explore leasing or purchasing, thinking about there's kind of two sides to the coin. There's the revenue and the expense, right? And revenue is great if we can program the expenses, right? So we always want to provide a service to the taxpayers. That's our mission. So if as revenues continue to grow, as long as our services continue to grow, then it's kind of a nice correlation. As long as the community members see that benefit.
Thanks.
TDM, a little bit of flattening. This is kind of due to the size of the district. And how it's already been kind of developed a little bit. And then also with the affordable housing development that has also happened that is exempt from property taxes. On the expense side, 2025 projected capital improvement program is extremely huge. That is in part because the amount of money that has rolled over from the previous year and the way this graph looks. So it goes from 0 to 450, so it looks very big. If I were to change the scale, probably would have been a little bit more accurate in terms of how much of a change it is, but because we didn't spend any money substantially from parking in 2024, it rolled over into 2025, so it gives us a bigger balance.
What were you supposed to spend the money on?
So we had a few things programmed in terms of like activations, but there wasn't a specific capital improvement program. Those signs that the wayfinding signs that were installed, that was a little bit of this money left over was from those signs. We didn't have the expenses anymore of those signs, so it's in part why there.
And just so I understand, that project is completed
That is correct.
and doesn't need more signs, like we missed one or two, it would be great to sort of
No, I
put
think
a couple more kind of thing.
yeah, I think the last one that we were wanting to install was installed. Sometimes I see Regan just jumped on too. You want to touch base on that, Regan?
Yeah, just confirming that project is complete. We installed the final signs last month.
So we were waiting on some coordination with a property owner, and we had that coordination and agreement finalized. And so yes, the project is complete.
And I guess, is there a post occupancy analysis, like we're done with the project, hey, did we miss something else? You know, because they usually you don't nail every single thing inside of your wayfinding on the first one. Like, you
Yeah.
always-
So I will say that the wayfinding signage is more of a marketing campaign than it was for actual like wayfinding. So it was to let people know, hey, you're in Boulder Junction. As you can see, the signs themselves were much more of like a marketed type of material to really express what Boulder Junction is. And the wayfinding is a little more on like the nuances of like, here's parking and those types of things. Those have not been finalized.
I don't have a sense if this is a lot or a little, I don't know what's left, I don't know how much money we're saving, or like, is there a way to see the full picture?
So part of this is what we tend to do is have a bucket for capital improvements for each of our districts. So we have a line item in CAP for downtown enhancements. So as needs come up, and it's $100,000 in that account. I think we've allocated the same amount of money in Boulder Junction for much smaller space. And there just wasn't a project that came to fruition out of the woodwork last year that spent those dollars down, but there's not, it's almost kind of, it's just a discretionary capital budget if there are needs that arise. We do have capital needs in the area. We know that the state of the infrastructure in the Depot Square Plaza area needs some help. Been waiting for all the construction to wrap up. And of course, that whole area is managed by our owners association, not directly by the district. And so the owners association is going to be making many of those investments. There's a lot of other infrastructure elsewhere in the district that could probably use some attention. We do have a walkthrough scheduled, was scheduled last week. It's getting rescheduled. We do know there are capital needs, and so we would intend to use that bucket of capital dollars to spruce up infrastructure.
So I understand the scope is, there's the signage, there's the parking and the assets and the maintenance of those. Is that the scope of the district, or? I mean, I guess I'm just thinking of economic vitality of the district and activating, bringing people, which is what desperately it needs, and. Rather than, doesn't seem like parking is the issue here, right? We have plenty of parking and it's empty. It's like, just how do we bring people here is the biggest issue. Can the scope vary here and think of different ideas?
Yeah, I mean, the timing is really good. Prior to the last couple of years, the fund health of the district was not great because we were paying off significant debt associated with the garage. We're now in a completely different space where we are bringing in more money than we are now spending, but there's a desire to maybe just adjust the mill levy down to our operating expenses. Yeah, as far as the scope of the district goes, certainly for parking specifically, the primary function is to provide parking and access related infrastructure. But the forming ordinance is open to other things that promote the health and well-being of the district, which is why we invested in things like the branding effort and the wayfinding with the signs that we've been led in the project. I would-
The program with all of the events last year.
Right, so we've spent money on activations with the Roots Music Project and all of the districts, and that's all comes from conversations that we have with the commission. So we've had retreats in the past that have identified the top priorities. A number of years ago, one of the top priorities was branding and wayfinding. That's what translated into resources to do that. So it's our first meeting. We will certainly be working to schedule, and it's later on in the agenda, some time for us to all get together to do some collective strategic planning and priority setting to inform work plans over the next several years as we seek to deploy these funds in a way that can be most impactful for the district.
You're right, though. I mean, the big thing is activation, bringing more people in. Parking, parking didn't have much of a capital improvement because capital improvement was the garage. There's not a whole lot of space left to build more garage. I think this discussion is new and different. If we're going to purchase more spaces in that garage, but parking has been paying 10 mils. TDM has been paying 5. Parking, we need to have this discussion this year. Get to it. How we're going to spend this now that we have growing revenue, but expenses are pretty much flat. Yeah, on the TDM side, and correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, the one major expense has been the Eagle passes that everybody in the district has gotten, and those expenses have gone down. Have gone down the way that probably the service has gone down. Again, going back to prior discussions, it's just like the service isn't there. When this TDM, TBAP document was first codified and passed, everyone anticipated that we'd have a world-class transit system with a train that went back and forth from Union Station and underground buses with buses kind of running in and out of there. That's not the reality of where we are. So we have to find better capital improvement projects.
Yeah, and as the owners, we are responsible for our portion of any capital improvements that the HOA does do on our behalf. No?
I'm sorry, I'm telling Ally, that's a different commission.
I'm so sorry.
HOA being the Depot Square of the restaurant, the hotel, that housing, and RTD.
And the parking garage, yeah.
So just that corner, if you call it on the east side when you enter.
Mhm.
And then one question to Elliot, of it new, now that we have the Pollard site pretty much built out, understanding that there's some non-property tax properties in there. Did all those properties, are they in both districts?
No, are
The
they?
30 Pearl are both in both districts, yes.
You're talking about the affordable housing project?
Well, and Morgan Creek, there's market rate housing in there too, in the old Pollard site.
And the affordable retail too, is there affordable retail that's not paying taxes to?
Well, and but they do, the properties pay payment in lieu of taxes to the districts.
Oh, got it. So there is where.
There is revenue, it's just not through the county, it's through separate invoicing that Elliot's team does.
And this is these are the priorities that this group voted on earlier this year as what you were really interested in focusing on, or focusing your energy on. And I think this crew reevaluates that every single year, based on the changing landscape, because things are constantly changing out there. So, I assume, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, I assume there's room to change this if necessary, but this felt like, the priorities a few months ago. Can you read it? Is it,
Yeah.
do we need to zoom in more? Yeah.
Back of the.
It hasn't been updated yet because it needed to be approved
Ah,
by TDM and
got
the
it.
consent agenda.
So yeah, these are always evolving.
Yeah, right, I mean, I think, 1 and 2 there are really aligned, like, if we don't have a capital improvement plan or requested, or even an ambitious capital improvement plan. Then we're looking at decreasing the mill levy to a place now that we're finally to a point where the district's built out. We have some better projections on what revenue is gonna be. Very right size it.
So, does the TVAP two regulated, but not the regulated plan, though. The plan that the city's putting together and all the improvements they're suggesting, transportation connections that were outlined in the land use. Are those informing anything here, as to how? Sort of what of these are gonna make sense to pay for?
So currently, the district is not responsible for any of the TVAP area phase 2 infrastructure. We've certainly been involved in the planning process. If there, well, and even in phase 1 Boulder Junction, there was a bond initiative that built the capital fund that made a lot of the horizontal improvements that were not responsibility. It couldn't be pushed to adjacent property owners as part of their developments. And so it's been an evolution, but the district was not the funder of the majority of those improvements in phase 1.
And what about the conversation on the train? I mean, is this still not even in this world right now?
We're following it and we'll see what happens.
I'm ready to go again this morning.
The governor is pushing really hard, and it won't be necessarily a high frequency train that was originally promised, but it seems like quite possible that by 2029 there will be 10 trips a day, which might mean 10 trips north and 10 trips south, with 20 trains a day going through the site, which could be interesting.
Into that, I mean, I presume RTD is not gonna let go of those spaces. If that, the horizon is 29.
RTD, yeah, that RTD is not, park and rides are not a moneymaker for them. That's more based on a dated model. It's more suburban.
So they're going away from that.
It's not a top priority for them. And this will not be RTD service. The joint services agreement will be Front Range Rail through the state. It will not be RTD. RTD will be paying a portion, they will be contributing toward the cost of the service, but they will not be the operators of the service.
Would it then be covered by the Eco Pass?
Yet to be determined.
It will be free.
Along with parking.
I'm sorry, I'm new at this, I'm not clear as to, was there anything more we needed to decide on this, or it's just for more for informational purposes?
This one's more informational and preliminary as we march toward the July meeting where we're gonna have more specifics and wanna hopefully get a positive recommendation from the commission for council.
So jumping in again, the TDM use of funds, 2025 projected, again, this is kind of just some carryover of encumbrances, that's why we're looking at some of those expenses there. And then the capital improvement program, we had some unspent dollars as well, again, that's gonna be going towards the district analysis phase 2 work, looking at Boulder Junction and what we're kind of doing there, so a contributing partner, not a full funding mechanism. So what this does for the fund balances, here's parking, kind of looking at it, so stable growth, nothing aggressive, but that's, you know, based on current states. If we change things, obviously that would have an impact on this. And then TDM, a little bit more aggressive growth there, and mainly due to the expense side of things, less expenses at TDM due to on the program college. So really, the next steps, we're gonna be looking at, if there are any increases to operational items, we need to start conceptualizing those. Moving any allocations to where we spend it, and then that, phase of any enhancements, so this is where we would be looking at. Do we expand any TDM programs? Do we offer any new TDM programs? Do we do any, investments in parking assets or leasing spaces, those types of things, so that'll be the next kind of phase that we're working on. And then, all of this to say, we still have a very big to-do list, not just in Boulder Junction, but also across the other districts as well as for the city itself. One thing I will say is the on-street parking portion of Boulder Junction is actually a general fund revenue producer, so a little bit weird nuance there, but that also means that we have some general fund dollars that help us kind of do some enhancements out there. And I think the parking meters or the pay station kiosks are up for replacement in the next couple years or so. Just to make sure that we're ahead of that, so that would be some things coming in there.
Remind me that, like, the district would pay for those, and the revenue would go to the general fund.
The general fund pays for the pay stations.
Okay.
Yeah, and the revenue goes to, as does parking enforcement. Great, any questions? The end of the show.
I would love to, just for, as we're working on the draft budget, and I think there's some key themes that we've been hearing from the meeting today around support for businesses, and support for some more specific elements in Sam's presentation. Those are things that will translate into, all right, we need to allocate money for the digital signage, for instance, in our recommended budget. Are there other things that you would like to make sure that we are considering in building up the budget?
Well, I mean, I do think as one of our priorities, the activations that we did last year, I felt were very successful. They seemed very well attended. I think that also is part of partnering with the local businesses and making sure that we're making that more visible. And it is one of our priorities, so I'm sure that's already included, but I just wanted to highlight it in this space as well.
Great.
Actually ask or follow up on that and just ask if there's sort of a way of knowing over time what activating tactics are most successful. Like I think Paul said, you sort of bring people to the area. But is it more about getting people who already live there to use the eco pass they have? You're not looking in the area to come there for commercial or recreational reasons. Do you value those differently?
Good question. I mean, we did some fun activations, which were, you know, we have bands, we have all the, you know, the partners come out and do, you know, meet community type of things, which are great for a Thursday evening or something like that. I think that the long-term vibrancy in my mind is having sustainable businesses, residences, retail, but they're all there, and then pushing to support them. The vacancy in the entire district has been stubbornly high throughout all those, for a variety of why that happens. It's all circumstantial, but Yeah, I mean, I think that was the whole vision that. People go to work there during the day and then the work people leave and the residents come home and, it's more of more hours activated during the day. Yeah, and so, how do we make it a place where. Office users want to go, residents want to go, retail shops.
Are there estimates on how many, like, I don't know what would be involved with this, but how, if rather than an office worker going elsewhere, if they just extend their time in the district by another hour or 2 hours with an after work drink or dinner or something like that, like, do we have a way of figuring out what like the rate of return is on that for those businesses? Because like, if we can get them just to stay a little bit after work, and what can we do within our capacity, obviously, but what we could do in our, like, to just extend, not about. I think the stubborn thing is, I think the most common thing I hear about Boulder Junction is, what is that?
Right.
It's like, well, so I mean, there's this stubborn inability, like, there's a stubborn, like, uphill battle with like trying to get people to recognize this unique and very cool district. There's a lot of cool stuff going on there, but like also, maybe just working with the people we have, but just slight extension, that's the goal. And I don't know what that is.
That's an interesting way of putting it, like, is it incremental participation on the part of the people who already have a tie to the district
Yeah.
goal? Is that, or like, how do you value that compared to somebody, a completely fresh interaction?
It's a warm sell, it's a warm handoff as opposed to a cold one.
I mean, maybe another way of asking the exact same question, like, if there were more money to spend on activation in the area, would everybody want more of the same? Different? I really do.
We can certainly explore, we don't want to be cruise directors or party planners
No, I
at
know.
the city.
Thank you.
But, but we do like to work, we have a number of partners that do like to be party planners and cruise directors, and so working on ways to engage with them and help sponsor and support their work in the public realm to create fun things for residents, visitors, employees alike in the area. Certainly something we've been working on in the past and can continue to prioritize in our resource planning.
I will say, I mean, that's a little bit of what we were trying to get at with the wayfinding, or at least design it. I mean, I think an issue with the district is that it's not very visible. Like you drive down Broadway, you walk down Broadway, you bike down Broadway, and you see the Pearl Street Mall, and that's activated, I can see that, I wanna go there. We don't really have that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you're biking down the Goose Creek path.
Yeah.
What's gonna make you get out?
I think those are all great questions, and I think that's, given the fund health of where we are now, we certainly have an opportunity to explore some of those investments. So I mean, it's nice that we're in that scenario and that the Pollard debt is paid off. So it's great you guys are thinking about it, as we are as well, and I know Regan's been thinking about a few things as well from her district vitality side. So certainly be looking for some programmed dollars, 26 and beyond to help support those types of things.
Is it fair to say the property owners don't see the benefit of family medicine? They're saying, it's like, we're not getting much out of this. There's no value, perception of value, right? I presume that's the case, that's what I've heard from a lot of people. And therefore, we should reduce the meals because nothing is happening. In the absence of nothing, then people say, yeah, I'm not okay, so wondering if.
In my opinion, I'll just answer that, I think that's more on the parking side. Parking now, we have debt paid off, you have that there. There is that benefit for those people that utilize that parking structure. Ongoing, I think that's the question we've talked about a lot. Should that 10 mils be reduced, eliminated? Should it be combined to 7 mils across the two? I think that's what I'd really like to figure out.
And Regan is here to dive into that in our next agenda item. Anything more?
Nothing more on the budget? No? If Regan off to Regan, and hopefully she can start to answer some of those questions.
So much pressure.
No pressure.
Good evening, everyone. Regan Brown, Senior Project Manager. Happy to give an update on the Improvement District analysis work. I don't have any slides this evening, just a verbal update, but happy to answer any questions. I'll start with a high-level summary for the newer commissioners. We have been working with Progressive Urban Management Associates, also known as PUMA. They are a Denver-based consultant to assess how our districts should evolve, and what financial and governance tools we can deploy to better meet current and future challenges in our existing general improvement districts. So Boulder Junction, downtown, also known as KJID, and then University Hill, also known as UJID, while also some broader considerations for other areas such as the civic area, Western City campus, which is being constructed up near Alpine Balsam, and then 55th and Arapahoe as well, which serves as a large employment center for the city. So the recommendations that stemmed from this work were presented to City Council on April 24th during a study session. It was essentially the same presentation that we shared with you all during the Joint Commission meeting on April 8th, I believe it was. And I'm happy to share out the memo from that City Council meeting for the newer commissioners if you'd like to dive in deeper to the recommendations or have Ellie share it. But the recommendations, particularly the exploration of a potential downtown development authority, also known as a DDA, were well received and supported by council. So happy to dive into a few key next steps, starting with the DDA exploration. We are still in the process of finalizing a scope of work and timeline for next steps, but for the DDA, we are working backwards from the goal of a potential ballot measure in November 2026. And so next steps will involve bringing on a consultant team. The intent is to continue working with PUMA to support financial modeling, evaluate existing governance structures and boundary development, and lead community engagement efforts as well. One of the additional recommendations from PUMA is to explore the potential consolidation of the BJAD districts. This would lead to potentially significant changes and implications for mill levies and governance. And we anticipate more detailed support and guidance from PUMA on how to approach this work in their final report, which is expected by the end of June. So happy to share that out with the commissioners once we receive that report. And then in parallel, we're also scoping work for the development of the commercial areas blueprint. This will serve as a strategic vision plan that will really help guide longer term investments. It'll outline actionable tactics and inform city staff work plans for all of Boulder's commercial areas over the next 10 to 20 years. And it will be developed in close coordination with the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan update. And this will be a really great opportunity for deeper community engagement around what the community desires in terms of what makes a commercial area vibrant, what makes it attractive. So more to come on that. We'll continue to keep you all updated, especially as we move into the implementation phases for these recommendations, but happy to field any questions in the meantime.
Thanks, Regan. Any questions for Regan? All right, thanks for hanging out with us for the last couple hours for your 5-minute update.
Of course.
All right, last item on matters from staff is also a short item. We had a commissioner, our chair of the Downtown Management Commission, has suggested that he would like the opportunity for a joint commissions summit in the context of strategic planning, planning retreat, identifying priorities and identifying synergies between priorities. This is largely tied to connections between the downtown and University Hill district, but there's also a need for good connection between downtown and Boulder Junction. And so we've just been bringing that suggestion or request to each of the commissions to make sure that they're feeling warm to the possibility. Would likely, I think we're targeting October for such a thing. It would be a multi-hour facilitated retreat style effort that allows us to dive into and hone district priorities and also community vitality priorities and how we serve all the districts together. I'm seeing some nods. Nobody hates the idea. So Ellie and team will be working to get some holds on calendars. October will be here before we know it. So more to come on agenda, development and what the day will look like. Promise we'll feed you and have lots of time for stretching and other engagement.
I suggest we offer to host out at TDM.
Yeah, the Roadhouse basement.
Yeah, it's a great spot.
Yeah,
That's a great spot.
or the Rocky Mountain Institute has a pretty nice basement.
Yeah.
All right, Ellie, you heard it here.
I'm sure, and I just know that.
We will focus on free. But there might maybe the Twitter space.
I hear it's available.
That concludes matters from staff, unless there are any questions.
Rebecca's gone, correct?
So Rebecca is gone. She did submit a written statement that Ellie is prepared to share.
Hey, fantastic. In that case, we're going to have matters from commissioners, specifically the pocket park from.
All right, so from Chair DuMichelle, the pocket park has been unusable by the neighborhood for a long time in an area with limited green space. This relates to the parking district as construction workers are parking illegally on the sidewalk. I did see an enforcement officer out one day. I'm driving over the sidewalk to park on the grass, which is now mud. I don't know if the construction companies are paying the district for the damage or avoided parking fees, but they're not parking in the public garages. This ties to the public comment from 2 meetings ago where the bollards in the plaza have been damaged and not replaced. I'm not sure what remedies the commission has or what background staff can provide regarding the rehabilitation and reopening of the pocket park, but the commission should be aware.
Thank you for sharing that. Do we have comment from staff?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, we're working with the Depot Square Owners Association on getting the bollards and other infrastructure in the plaza area back up to a state of good repair. Parks and Recreation has also prioritized the completion of the pocket park, landscaping and turning it into an official city park. I think they are planning to get that work done certainly by growing season next year, with some work happening this year. They will actually be planning staff will be showing up at the September meeting. I believe I'm looking at Ellie, but she's multitasking. Mark Davison from planning or from Parks and Recreation will plan to attend the September Boulder Junction meeting.
Yes.
To discuss the pocket park scope and budget, because they are short and in need of support, financial support to implement. And so we will likely be turning to the commissions to give a thumbs up for a district contribution to get the park improvements made.
Thank you for that update. In the meantime, is there any enforcement going on that could possibly help mitigate this issue in the short term?
That's a good question. I believe the park was included in the space that the developer was allowed to use in the development agreement during construction.
Okay.
So it's a challenging space. They're almost done. I don't know if there's been any other complaints for parking enforcement out there related to construction, because we do hear this, the impact of construction vehicles a lot in other parts of town that are more established. We haven't been getting a lot of complaints in this area. I think people are just they're kind of used to it.
Tire
For better
popping
or
is
for
my
worse.
main major complaint is how many tires I pop, like on my bicycle.
On your bike.
Always pop tires on my bike over there.
All right, can we get a graph over time and see a decline once construction's done?
Just send no. No, I don't know anything.
Oh, sorry.
So, thank you very much for the update. I appreciate you taking that seriously. Okay, we have do we have any other comments on Pocket Park for the staff or? Okay. Our next BJAD commission meeting will be at 4 PM on Wednesday, July 23rd. And with that, I think we're ready to adjourn.
All right,
Right on time.
amazing.